City Council. And we'll start with roll call. Wayne Modernock, Chairman of the Board of Jones County.
Phil Oswald.
Ned Rowitter.
Lloyd Aiken.
John Zuckerman.
Beth, would you please conduct roll call for the city?
Brooke.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Lockhart.
Here.
Zumba.
Here.
Stout.
Here.
Thank you very much. I would invite anyone that would like to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Second by Ned. Any further discussion? Joe? Aye. Ned? Aye. Lloyd? Aye. John?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Beth, would you?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
All right, at this time, I will ask the engineer and Jones County Sheriff if they would like to make a statement.
Wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight and the elected officials for having an unprecedented joint meeting. The reason for my opening comments is I would like to also thank everyone who has chose to attend here, elected officials, engineer, the Iowa Department of Transportation is here, business owners, we have attorneys, we have just local community members, and I think this is an important topic. What I want everyone to kind of keep in mind is we want this public hearing to be about how this intersection closure would impact you. If you are here to voice concern about leaving the intersection open, then feel free to voice experiences or observations that you have had out there. What we don't want at this meeting is a debate about whether this intersection is dangerous or not. It's hard to argue the data, and the data is clear that this intersection is one of the most dangerous intersections in the state, and by far the most dangerous intersection in Jones County. We want this process to be about identifying problems or impacts and working together as a community to find solutions in the planning and implementation phase, and we want this to be beneficial to local traffic, businesses, and also economic development. I have seen personally some of the hateful comments posted on social media about this and about some of the victims involved through the years about this intersection. I please want you to be respectful of each other when it comes to difference of opinions. There are family members in this room who have been affected by tragedies at that intersection, so please be very mindful of them. And we want this meeting to be productive so that all of our citizens can benefit. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks everybody for coming out. I'm not going to go into some of the details that some of our office staff have looked into as far as numbers that justify the dangerousness of this intersection. I think everybody here realizes and understands that it is a dangerous intersection. What our office did to kind of, I guess, maybe get the ball rolling a little bit on this, we have the Board of Supervisors has the power of closing and vacating a road. In order to follow through with that process, a public hearing needs to be created and undertaken. That way we can get the input of everybody involved. And so I think a lot of you probably seen that, and it was a little shocking to some of you that we would think about closing an intersection that has the volume of traffic that this one does. And this particular location's got about very close to 12,000 vehicles a day on Highway 151 go through this location. There's about over 5,000 vehicles that use the old Dubuque Road. And then to the east on 130th Street, there's just under 600 vehicles. So it impacts a lot of people, and you don't generally see an intersection that does impact that many people have the possibility of closing or changing or getting altered in some way or fashion. But we do feel strongly that this one has the necessity, has some of the things that we at least need to discuss it and to look at it. And we intended this meeting, and these guys and gals set this all up so so we could have a starting point. Maybe a closure isn't the answer. Maybe there's a lot of different options out there, but we need to start at some point. We've been talking about this particular intersection for about 13 years or so now in this regard. Back in 07, 08, 09, with the DOT and the city and the county all together, we were kind of at this very same point, having these very same meetings, and here we are in 2020, and we still haven't gotten any farther. So we're hoping for input from every one of you, and then maybe we can all work together and make it work for everybody. So that's all I got. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Derek.
At this time, I would like to open it up to the audience for comment. If you wish to have a comment, please come up to the podium. We ask that you state your name, your address, and you will be given 2 minutes timed by Todd Postel to make your comment. At this time, I welcome anyone to come up.
Somebody's got to be first. I'll break the ice.
I would add, please use the microphone that they have out there. We don't have a stand for it.
This one?
Yeah, it'll have to be turned to power at the top button. Thank you.
My name is Dave Remley. I live at 11262 Highway 151, just down the road from this intersection, about a mile. I'm familiar with the intersection. I go through it several times a week. Done this for over 20 years, since it was 4-lane. With respect to 130th Street, there are very few accidents that involve 130th Street traffic. Closing 130th Street will create a greater risk to public safety than exists now, because the traffic on 130th Street will be rerouted through residential neighborhoods, Caitland, Brecca, Meadow Ridge, and Chamber Drive, and it'll add to the congestion down at the stoplight by Tyson's. With respect to the Old Dubuque Road, I favor closing the current access when the new extension is opened, for 3 reasons. Number one, public safety. If the current intersection is closed before there's a new extension built, it'll transfer all that traffic down to the 5-way stop, the Wayne Hall 4-way stop, and side streets in Anamosa. It'll increase the risk of accidents at all those locations. Second reason also involves public safety. It will create a dead-end street, and if the 5-way stop should be blocked for any reason, as I understand it was not too long ago with a gas leak, it would leave the middle school with 400 plus students and staff on a dead-end street, 60 residential units, 2/3 of which are occupied by the elderly, and several businesses. In addition, creating a dead-end street there would violate the spirit of the county's own subdivision ordinance, which prohibits dead-end streets longer than 750 feet.
Got about 30 seconds left, Dave.
Thank you. It also, keeping it open will keep the city and the county motivated to get this thing on a fast track and get it done. I know there are interim concerns about safety. There are 3 things that can be done in the interim, and one of them was in effect today. The new warning lights were activated. The city and county could jointly request the DOT to decrease the speed limit like is done in Springville, and there could be aggressive speed enforcement. I think I'm out of time. I do have a handout here which gives I've got one for each council person and supervisor member. If you want to pass these down, it simply shows the history of accidents since 2009. I tried to get back earlier, but the DOT said they only had available since January 1, 2009. So that data is 11 years, shows 41 accidents, 22 property damage only, the one fatality, which we know about, and 6 serious injury accidents, 6 minor injury accidents, and 6 undetermined whether there were any injuries or not. So that I'm all for closing it, but let's get the extension open first.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Romberg. I live on Shaw Road behind Scooters. I'm totally against closing it off. I do a lot of volunteering with the elderly. I take them for rides. I use that intersection probably 3 times a week. All you have to do is stop and wait. My condolences to anybody who lost anybody. People are just way too fast. There's just as many problems on Shaw Road and 151 by Scooters. There's been just as many accidents there, serious, deadly. I totally disagree with closing it. Thank you.
Kurt Andreessen, 206 Wilson Court, which is right across from the entrance to the middle school there. Moved there in 2014. I believe at that time we were the first family on that block, at least at that time, with young kids. Since then, there are now 7 young kids that live on that block, one of them being a middle school student. And I believe I sent letters to all of you, but just kind of to emphasize it, pulling off onto there on a school day, event days when there's cross-country meets, sporting events up at the new baseball softball complex. It's a challenge to begin with, and a lot of those, especially the event traffic, is coming in off of 151 currently, especially when you talk like those cross-country days. I mean, it is a steady stream of traffic coming off of 151 to access the middle school. You take that entrance away, all that traffic is coming up Old Dubuque Road. And with the 7 kids we had there now, they're all middle school age or younger. They're going to be growing up, they're going to be crossing that road to get to school, to come home from school. We walk, we ride our bikes up and down the sidewalk there on the other side of Old Dubuque Road. I mentioned it in a letter. I've personally had to pull across when there's been a middle school student. We've been waiting there, 2-3 minutes in the morning just to cross to turn out onto Old Dubuque Road. And when I've caught a gap on at least 2 occasions this school year, I've pulled crossways into Old Dubuque Road and stopped my truck to make sure traffic from both directions would stop so this kid could cross to get to the middle school. I hate to think of what it's going to be like when we if we would add additional traffic onto Old Dubuque Road that isn't coming in off 151. The safety for my kids that live on the block, and potentially future kids that live there. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Karen Maleko. I live at 517 Old Dubuque Road, which sits right on the corner of that intersection. I've stopped for accidents there since approximately, the late 1980s. I was on the old ambulance squad. If I was coming back from Monticello at that time, I'd come across accidents even back then. And they weren't pretty. This recent accident, and I apologize to the family of that young lady for saying this, was horrific. The deputy that was in saw things that no one should see. My husband and I have responded to just about every accident that's been out there since we moved in, which was 2012. You know about the accidents that the police department gets called to, or the fire department or the ambulance squad. You don't know about the accidents where these crazy kids come flying down that road, end up in our ditch, go sliding during the winter, block the intersection. The traffic on Old Dubuque Road, on average, I get passed on that road 2 to 3 times a week by people in such a rush to get to this highway. You need to close this road and keep it closed. Putting a bypass in up by J&P Cycles, I don't know if that's going to actually alleviate the problem. Because now you have cars driving like bats out of hell right next to your middle school.
About 30 seconds, Karen.
Something needs to be done. It needs to be done now. You know, I know it's inconvenient for people. So take an extra 15 minutes. You can go through town, but you can also save a life. Thank you.
Thomas McAdee. I live in Stanwood, but I went to high school up here. What like some people are saying, I say keep the road open, tear out that intersection where you would pass over to go to the north, and then, you know, make it so that traffic has to just go down to 64, and if they need to, hop back on 64 and then head back up that way and make it safer. And Old Dubuque Road, I think if you put stop signs in there for the school, you know, ladies concerned about, you know, speeding, why not put some stop signs for there? Even though, you know, there's not a sidewalk on the other side, but it'll slow down the speeders through there. And I've read about Conrad and that, and, you know, with driving the semi with going through town, you know, you have maybe the school has some delivery, and, you know, they have to come down through town. That old Dubuque Road would be perfect for truck traffic, but just put stop signs in, you know, be more clear about that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Goodman. I live at 804 East First Street here in Anamosa. And I won't go on and on belaboring the point, but Greg, I know that you are spearheading the effort to get this intersection closed, and I love you like a brother, but I adamantly disagree with the closure. You have businesses on that road. You have a middle school, you have senior housing, you have properties that are potential business sites. You close that road, you'll never have anybody move in there with businesses. These accidents are being caused by three reasons. Speed, distracted driving, and people who shouldn't be driving, who have lost their depth perception or don't realize how fast the cars are going. And I would suggest that you put in increased signs, leave the intersection open. increase traffic enforcement. And when an accident does happen there, publicize what caused the accident, rather than stepping over it because of concern of hurting somebody's feelings. My condolences to everybody who has been killed at that intersection. Our neighbor was killed in 2004, Artie Achenbach, and our oldest daughter was killed in a tragic car accident. And I understand the grief, but you need to leave the intersection open. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Buckholt. I live at 416 Council Street. That is in the new Meadow Ridge development. On the east side. Sorry. I'm all for solutions if this intersection would be closed, but it needs to be figured out first. I am terrified of additional traffic coming through this newly developed neighborhood. There are so many more kids in this neighborhood with growing up. School buses don't even want to make a turn in our neighborhood as I tried to get a new bus route implemented. And then sending all that traffic from Fawn Creek, the road isn't complete, Chamber Drive is still under construction. All of these construction vehicles, and they don't slow down. Sometimes you have a kid who loses the ball in the middle of the street, and you're running after them, and you're like, ah, stop. Rod, I've talked to you a couple times about sidewalks not being completed in our neighborhood. Major concern if you're going to start sending traffic from Fawn and 130th down to Lane Chamber, Meadow Ridge, Court, Breckenridge Drive. It's just something we need to complete that neighborhood, I think, before we start sending additional traffic through it. That's it. Thank you.
My name is Mark Maliko, and my wife and I have some disagreements about this situation, and we've been together 40 years. What a surprise. We have responded to many, many accidents at that intersection. Yet, I do think it should stay open for a couple of reasons, at least until it gets explored. For example, we're gonna have a lot more truck traffic, bus traffic coming through town, as somebody else pointed out before. The town's infrastructure at this point, I don't know if it could handle the four-way up right by the community center up here. You have trucks with a lot of weight on them, and the roads are not in good condition right now. You're gonna have a backup in traffic. You're gonna have expanded costs for the schools to bus people through town. Will it affect emergency response going north to Monticello and use that road quite often
About 30 seconds.
to go north on 151. So will that slow down response time getting to an accident or something else going up in Monticello or Wyoming or Center Junction, because they do use the road. We've watched this for 7 years. And I do apologize, and anybody that's has somebody that's lost a life here, or a family member, I'm very sorry for that. But I do think the road should stay open. Thank you.
My name is Conrad Shada, owner of Conrad Shada Trucking, and along with my father at Shada Cattle Company. We've been at that location. My great-grandpa Del Brickley started that in 1947, and even though we do not have live sales anymore, we use our facility for our private Western feeder cattle sales. And approximately we sell between 6,000 and 8,000 cattle a year out of that facility. And every animal that we purchase comes into our facility and leaves that facility. We have about 250 trucks per year that go in and out of our driveway. Now, I understand there's been some serious accidents, and in fact, Artie Achenbach was a good friend of mine and gave me my first ride in my semi, and he gave me my first ride in his semi, and I gave him his last ride in mine. So I read a eulogy at his funeral, so I totally understand the issues. But closing it down without a plan in place will open up a whole can of worms, not just for us, but for the community. My truck is roughly 80 feet long and approximately 80 to 85,000 pounds on that truck. I have two options to get into the sale barn. I can either come through Fairview or I can come up from 151 over here to this corner. Both of them are not good options. I cannot make the corner here without swinging into the other lane. I've done it in the middle of the night when I've come home empty from the east. My big fear is when I make that turn and school is let out and traffic, if all this traffic is coming this way, I've got to swing out and get into the oncoming lane of traffic to miss that curve. What happens when there's a bunch of kids and I make that turn and inadvertently jump the curb and there's children in the playing or in the way? I just don't think you can shut a road down on a business that we try to do things right. I don't think anybody wants our trucks coming up through town. I can't make the turn down by the old Casey's without overlapping on the oncoming side of traffic. And we try to stay out of town, and I'm very concerned about the other trucks that we hire coming in the night and getting hung up. But I think you have to keep the road open, and I don't know what we're going to do to access our facility if it's shut down without another plan in place. Thank you.
behalf of ADCO, which is the Anamosa Development Corporation, and a group of people who have created a few subdivisions in town, have also worked with the city to get rid of some blight projects, and generally want to see the town advance. I had a nice bunch of points to talk to you about. Dave covered them all. I'm not going to cover them again, almost right down the line. What I do want to say is number 5 on your agenda, to create a committee, to have a bunch of people from town work together, get some people that are engaged, motivated, solve the problem of that intersection, but also set Anamosa up for growth in the future. So I commend you for having that on your agenda as an item later tonight. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tammy Dearborn. I live at 600 Mike Williams, and I have some properties out at Brecker Ridge, which is where the traffic will travel from Fawn Creek when the intersection is closed. I commend you for having this meeting. It's great to do this, but we need foresight to grow our community and not to hinder the growth there. My safety concern that I have is you're putting in some dead-end streets with some large buildings. You've got Fawn Creek Country Club, you've got the condos out there, and you've got the middle school. If you have a fire at one of those facilities, how are you going to get help from Monticello if that intersection is closed? They're going to have to come all the way through town, and I really feel that you're going to hinder any fire assistance from them. Also, Fawn Creek Country Club has many large tournaments and weddings, graduation celebrations and everything, and you make that a dead-end street. All those beer trucks, all those people from those receptions are gonna have to find their way through and around Caitlin and all that area. And I don't think that those people that are paying some of our highest property taxes in town are gonna appreciate all those big trucks coming down their street. And they bought those properties, and their families that have little kids, they bought those properties without having all those large trucks and vehicles coming through there. And it's not fair to them to do that to them. But my biggest concern is the safety. If there was a big, large fire, and the fire trucks would have to go all the way around to get to the condos and Fawn Creek and even to the middle school.
I'm not using the mic. I don't think it's working right. I'll just speak without it. Good evening. My name is Tyler Remley. I lived in the Anamosa community for over 40 years, and I worked in law enforcement for over 20 of those years. 5 of those years as a technical accident investigator, so I am no stranger to the Old Dubuque Highway 151 intersection. Looking at previous collisions, it shows we should do something to improve safety at that intersection. However, the same information shows that 130th Street is not part of the problem. It's hard to determine from the DOT stats exactly which side of the intersection it was on, but the numbers I'm hearing is 85% of all collisions come on the Old Dubuque Road side and only 15% on the 130th side. By closing 130th Street, it enforced ag equipment, large trucks, and extra traffic on city streets, creating danger for other vehicles and pedestrians. As far as Old Dubuque Road goes, I'm offering suggestions and not a solution. The flashing lights that the DOT's been working on, actually Price Electric, I think they turned them on today, at least northbound. I was told the cost was around $600,000 between Anamosa and Springville. So that's roughly, this is just a ballpark, $300,000 for those lights. They were turned on today. If we lowered the speed limit to 55, hits in time distance out there, it would allow 2 extra seconds of visibility from the apex of that curve. 2 seconds is a lot of time when it comes to avoiding collisions. Another option that's already been talked about is extending Old Dubuque Road to Parham Drive, and even maybe someday making or building an overpass. I encourage the city and county officials to work together to come up with a solution that improves safety for the general motoring public and makes sense for the residents of Anamosa and Jones County. Thank you.
All right, at this time, is there any more public comment? Does anyone else wish to make a statement? Yes.
Mike Speaking Notice Talk. I'm Scott Wilson, 411 Old Dubuque Road here in Anamosa. I'm right next to Shada, the old Monsanto plant that consists of about 5 buildings down there. Also, great family friends of the last person lost in the accident over there. So, heartbreaking thing on that side. From my point of view, for my tenants who are in there, I've got guys that got about 20 trucks that go in and out of there every day. They got trailers, they've got semis coming in delivering things. Talking to the owner of that business, he's afraid if this were to close down immediately without a solution, he would have to look to, go somewhere else that was more convenient for his business, which I would understand from what's going on. I'm all about a solution. I'm all about something safer. I think the frontage road up to Parham would be good. I think slowing down to 55 would be good. But I think overall for the town, closing it without a solution off the bat would be more detrimental than positive right off the bat. But I'm all about making some changes as well. So, thanks.
All right, anyone else? Seeing none, I will take a motion to close the public hearing. So moved. Second. Any further discussion? Joe? Aye. Ned? Aye. Lloyd? Aye. John? Aye. Chair votes aye.
City motion to close public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Kay, second by John. Opposed, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimous.
All right, at this time, we have 2 other agenda items. Would anyone like to have a motion to vacate and close at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next. Would anyone like to make a resolution forming a committee to oversee the design and implementation of Old Dubuque Road extension? I'll move on that. Is there a second? Third. Any further discussion? At this point in time, I would like to say that I think it would be a very good idea to adopt this resolution, to get input from city officials, to get input from county officials, to also hear from key businesses, key law enforcement, safety officials to decide what the best route moving forward is out there. That's my opinion, and I think it's a good start to form a committee and start to get some representatives and some good conversations going as soon as possible.
From the city, and entertain a motion to adopt a extension to Farham Drive, closure of intersection of Old Dubuque Road, 530th Street, and US Highway 53.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Rich, second by Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
From the county side, Joe?
Aye.
Ed? Aye. Floyd? Aye. John? Aye. Chair votes aye.
Sorry, should put it on our agenda, but because it's a resolution, we'll need to do it over.
Step,
Yes.
Zumba,
Yes.
Lockhart,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
And Derek, do you have something you wish to say?
Just have one quick last thing for everybody to maybe digest. There's been a lot of comment, and very good. And that was really the biggest intent of this meeting, to try to get everybody's feedback and input on this very sensitive subject. Obviously, this is a huge decision. Brought a lot of people out. It impacts a lot of different people, businesses, landowners, residents, kids, schools, everything. So we spent a lot of time doing a lot of discussion on different possibilities that could come from something like this. Probably some of the biggest input from everybody, I think a frontage road from Old Dubuque Road to Arnhem Drive, it makes the most sense for this particular situation. It's something we're gonna pursue very heavily. Try and work with the DOT. There's lots of safety fundings out there. We think that this would have a lot of positive impacts and a lot of different things. There's also options as far as leaving 130th Street open with maybe some acceleration, deceleration type lanes that would maybe not put so much pressure on different streets, essentially kicking the can down the road. There's been, I think, a little bit of misconception on some of the talking points tonight, and I think before people fester on it or maybe get stuck on that, maybe just address it very quickly. Things like distracted driving or speeding or impairment and some of those type of things as being some of the leading causes for all these accidents out there. And I think some of the people at the DOT are in agreement that that's not necessarily the case in this particular situation. Granted, all those things definitely do not help, but there's definitely, without a doubt, other factors in some of these accidents at this particular location, whether it's shadowing of other vehicles, whether it's sight distance, whether it's both the horizontal and vertical curvature of the road out there. There's a lot of factors that impact this particular location that accidents are just what they are. For the most part, they're accidents. There's some degree of course, of driver error, but if we do have something that's so repetitive at a particular location, it probably is a means and a way to definitely try to solve that situation. As far as other places being just as dangerous or maybe causing more dangers to it, I mean, 1 out of 8 serious accidents happen in Jones County at this particular location. There is no other place around our area that is more dangerous than this very particular location. You know, the idea that all this congestion and everything is going to happen if something like this does. I think there's things that we can do as far as the additional frontage roadways or different aspects that is out there that is a possibility that could even make things better than what it is there right now. So I think forming the committee is a very good thing. Having the DOT as a partner in this is something that I think will really help us push it forward. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to not only make this location much safer, but also do have a lot of other positive impacts that have nothing to do with traffic safety. So I think the idea that closing it, I think not to fester on just nobody being able to use it and everything's going to get worse. I do think there's lots of opportunity, and the committee will work hard to do that as fast as possible, because every single day, no matter what, at the end of the day, every day that's open, it's just that much closer to the next bad accident. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Greg?
So I would just like to make a couple points kind of in follow I support extending a frontage road to Farham Drive. There was many points brought up. The last thing we want is to create dead ends or to create traffic issues at the bottom of the 5-way or the high school. If we extend the frontage road up, it does a couple things. It will allow for some kind of development or growth up on that northwest corner of 151. It will also allow citizens, it will allow school buses, that kind of stuff, to use an access road without getting onto 151 to come into the schools or town. It will also, you know, improve the ability for us to access that area. I'm not going to disagree with the fact that there is going to be some pain with this, and there is going to be some effects of this, and there's going to be some inconvenience of this. That is without question. What I do want to point out is on the evening of November 6th of last year, I spent several hours at the hospital with family and friends of the victim. That night, the question was posed to me, when are we going to do something about that intersection? Most of you I've known my entire life. Love you like a brother too. And I've lived here my entire life, and that intersection has been the scene of countless death and serious injury. I've been an EMT and paramedic since 1993 and worked at the sheriff's office since 1995. Went home, spent a couple days thinking about it, and I am an elected official, as are you. I'm up for re-election this year, and I knew from 2009, which he talked about, that this would be controversial and that it would be something that would probably be unpopular about taking my stand. Was this something I was willing to put my name and reputation on the line to support? At the end of the day, my decision is if the closure and the change of that intersection resulted in the saving of one life, I would sleep better at night, and I was willing to risk that. And that's why I chose to take the decision that I made. There was a lot of talk about convenience coming into this. Crashes at that intersection are primarily caused by the factor of 3 reasons. Those 3 reasons are geography of the intersection, the curve, the downgrade, the number of lanes of traffic, and now the flashing lights. The volume of traffic, which is only going to continue to increase on 151 and is not going to decrease. And then we have the factor of human error. Unless we change any of those, we are going to continue to kill and maim people at that intersection. Our citizens, the people who visit Anamosa. I have a list of the accidents, which Dave kind of talked about. There's 48 accidents that I have record on in the last 19 years. Of those, 20 were injury or death accidents. They brought up the fact of the lights out there on 151 that they are activating today. I was notified by DOT those lights were put up at another dangerous intersection, and they had a fatality after the lights were installed. The light is not a fix. It is maybe a temporary to get us by, but it is not going to fix the problem. Neither is decreasing the speed limit. When you have vehicles moving variety of speeds in a curve, it is going to make it much more difficult, not easier, for traffic to judge when to pull out on that intersection and when not to. 6.5% of all deaths in Jones County occur at that intersection alone. 8.6% of all serious and incapacitating injuries on Jones County roadways occur at that one intersection. Here's the discussion from 2009 and what DOT and members of the community came up with as far as different ways that we could address that intersection. And there was about 2 years of work and a lot of people that went into this. 10 years later, none of this, not one thing out of this has been accomplished. 0. We've continued to kill people, and we've continued to injure people out there. So I'm asking the elected officials, I support the committee, putting a committee together, because I think it's important that we continue to come up with good solutions, starting on the Old Dubuque Road side, and eventually down the road, work on addressing the east side. But for the immediate future, we have to know the longer that we keep the intersection open at Old Dubuque Road, we already know it's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when someone else is going to get killed out there. And so we have to know that we don't have a lot of time to sit and do this. I know that people may not support me for this decision, but at the end of the day, I still live in this community, I still have family in this community. I welcome the fact that you contact your local officials about ideas, but doing absolutely nothing is not a solution. And so it's time to quit talking about this, and it's time to start taking action to save people's lives. Thank you.
That brings us to the end of the agenda. I will take a motion to adjourn. I'll move. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The Board of Supervisors is adjourned.
I'll entertain a motion from the city to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by John, second by Rich. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous decision to adjourn.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great day.
Hey, not bad. How are you guys doing? Good job.
I thought you'd be up to give it your opinion.
No. I'm scared of cameras.
Yeah.